Hi everyone. So I'm going to talk to you today about the keto diet and our gut. Please excuse me, my voice has gone and come back, and now I think it's on its way out again. So keto, I want to talk about this because the keto diet is really, really popular at the moment. And there's some research that shows there are benefits, and there's also a lot of contradictory research out there. So the ketogenic diet, or the keto diet for short, was originally created in the 1920s. It was originally created as an epilepsy treatment. And then since then, research has shown that it can lower cholesterol and also our blood fats. It can stabilize blood sugar control. It can improve insulin sensitivity and can possibly help with weight loss, which is why it tends to be recommended as a therapeutic diet for people with high blood or high fat in their blood, or pre-diabetic, or even weight loss. So there's some really good research on its role as a therapeutic diet. Also for people experiencing some cancers, not all cancers, and I wouldn't say the research was conclusive, but there's some really interesting research coming out. And there's some really interesting research on its use as a therapeutic diet for people with Alzheimer's disease too. Now, the way the diet works is to change our energy source. So we usually use glucose, which comes from carbohydrates, as our main energy source. So the ketogenic diet swaps the fuel source from glucose to ketones. So as glucose basically comes from carbohydrates, ketones come from fat. And the rule is generally to have less than 50 grams of carbohydrates a day in order to stay in what we call ketosis. And ketosis is when you are producing ketones as your energy source. Now, alongside the less than 50 grams a day, the diet requires a high percentage of fat in your diet and what we would say a moderate increase of protein. Now, the current guidelines from where our energy comes from, which comes from government, is that around 25 to 35% of our energy should come from fat. Around 45 to 65% of our energy should come from carbohydrates, and around 15 to 25% should come from protein. That's your standard diet. So with ketogenic, there are different types of ketogenic diets, and they have differing recommendations from where our energy comes from. So the standard ketogenic diet is a very low carbohydrate with moderate protein, high fat. So that's around 70% of our energy should come from fat, 20% should come from protein, and only 10% should come from carbohydrates. Then we've got what's called the cyclical ketogenic diet, which is basically cycle. So our body plateaus when we have the same thing all the time. So the idea with the cyclical ketogenic diet is that you mix it up. So sometimes you have periods where you have high carbohydrates, and then you have a ketogenic diet, the standard ketogenic diet. So you might have 5 ketogenic days followed by 2 high carbohydrate days. So, for 5 days you have your 70% is coming from fat, 20% protein, 10% carbs. And then from 2 days, you'll have your 45 to 65% come from carbs, 25 to 35% will come from fat. So you kind of mix it up in order to kind of trick the body so it doesn't plateau. That's starting to become a bit more trendy now. Then you've got what's called the targeted ketogenic diet, which means that if you are particularly athletic or you're working out, then you perhaps have a little bit more carbohydrate around those specific times, just so you're getting glucose when you're physically working out. And then there's something called the high protein ketogenic diet, which is a little bit more protein. So you'll have 60% fat, 35% protein, and only 5% carbohydrates, which is a tiny amount. So the standard ketogenic diet and that high protein ketogenic diet has been used extensively. Targeted ketogenic diet, the cyclical ketogenic diet, generally used by bodybuilders and athletes. And out of all of those, that standard ketogenic diet is the most researched and the more commonly recommended. One of the main problems with the ketogenic diet, or actually any low carbohydrate diet, is that if it's not done properly, And there's definitely a proper way of doing it and a not proper way of doing it. You can have a lower intake of vegetables, fruits and grains, and an increased intake of perhaps not healthy fats, which ends up being really detrimental. So being on a low carbohydrate, high fat diet in the long term is believed by some researchers to stimulate inflammation in the body and can promote biological aging. So there is some research, but as I said, we have to be really clear, because there is a massive difference between carbohydrates and fats. Not all fats are equal. Not all carbohydrates are equal. You know, avocado, nuts, seeds, fish, a bit of butter is really good for us. And it's not the same as deep fried foods or buckets and buckets and buckets of coconut oil. There's a big difference between the two. There is a difference between an apple and a muffin. So there is a way of doing the ketogenic diet or a low carbohydrate diet in a really healthy way and doing it in a really unhealthy way. One of the biggest challenges with the keto diet is sustainability. It can be hard work and many people get bored and then they revert back to their original diet and then weight piles on and they feel really rubbish. So there are recent studies that suggest that the ketogenic diet can have a negative effect. It does have health implications such as insulin resistance, micronutrient deficiency, and heart issues. So what's really clear from the research, because it's really contradictory, is that we need more research done on the long-term effects of keto diet, because originally it was meant as a therapeutic diet. It wasn't meant as a lifestyle diet. So we do need more research in order to say yes for definite or not. I would say, though, it does depend on how it's done. So the main purpose of this discussion is really to focus on how the keto diet impacts gut health. So the number one concern is low fiber, because the keto diet eliminates mainly carbohydrates, which includes vegetables, fruits, whole grains, and legumes, and also it can also limit the amount of fiber. So fiber, we know, is a superfood because it feeds our good gut bacteria. It works like a broom for the bum. It clears the digestive system and it makes sure you stay regular. So a low fiber diet, we know, is directly related to an inflammatory gut conditions like diverticulitis, hemorrhoids, ulcers, colon cancers, constipation. So we need fiber. We need to have, so a keto diet that's low on fiber is not going to be good for you. The other thing is the gut microbiome. So the microbiome is the name we give for good bugs, but it also includes the bacteria, viruses, yeast, and their genes. And there's an ever-growing body of research to show the health benefits of having a healthy microbiome. So just to be clear, there's microbes everywhere, not just in our gut, everywhere in our body. We are 98% microbe. But there's been some really good studies to show that the keto diet, when it's a low fiber and high unhealthy fat diet, can actually change the composition of our gut microbiome. So there was a 6-month study of 217 people that were aged between 19 and 35 years old, and they had a high fat diet, and they showed that it actually led to unfavorable gut changes, which basically included increased inflammation due to the increase in specific bacteria. So it changed the makeup. So they ended up with more of a certain type of bacteria that promotes inflammation, bacteria called bacteroides. And it reduced the amount of beneficial fatty acids, like butyric acid, which our gut bacteria make, which have numerous health benefits. So they also studied that there was an increase in pro-inflammatory chemicals in their blood too. But as I said, in fairness, there's a lot of contradictory research because of the way ketogenic diets are actually done. So it's not the ketogenic diet, it's how it's been done, whether they're healthy carbs and healthy fats or not. The largest gut study to date is called the American Gut Project. And that surveyed around 11,000 people and found that the number one predictor of a healthy microbiome was the variety of plant foods consumed in a diet. So we know that when you restrict diversity, you restrict the diversity of your gut microbiome, and that then causes disease. So according to the American Gut Project's findings, we should be eating about 30 different plant foods a week. So that's 30, that's true. It sounds a huge amount, but that includes herbs and spices, veggies, fruits. So the 30 in a week, count up how many different. So you don't want carrot every night, you want a variety. So people who ate a diet high in animal products, such as eggs, meat, and dairy, for just 5 days experienced significant growth in gut bacteria associated with their irritable bowel syndrome. So you have to be really careful that if you're on a ketogenic diet, you could be, if it's not done properly, possibly laying the foundation for IBS in the future because it changes the microbiome. However, there are also studies to show that the keto diet can be really beneficial to the gut. So benefits include that if the ketogenic diet is done in a way where you are having lots of vegetables and healthy fats, it can actually decrease inflammation in comparison to a low-fat diet. The keto diets also improve the symptoms of IBS in some people, probably because when you're on the ketogenic diet, it's very similar to the FODMAPs diet. So you're removing a lot of carbohydrates that can actually create bloating and discomfort and inflammation in some people because you're removing foods that you might be intolerant to and not even know. Another study was 17 patients, so it's actually quite a small study, but they followed the normal standard diet for 4 weeks, followed by a keto diet for 4 weeks. And they basically looked at the people on the study, their gut microbiome before and after the keto diet. And they found that common gut bacteria, family, called bifidobacteria, decreased after the ketogenic diet. And then they repeated the study in mice, they showed the same results. And what they thought from this study is that it's possible that the keto diet might actually reduce intestinal inflammation. What was interesting, that on a purely high-fat diet, it actually created inflammation, did the opposite. So it's not necessarily the fat, it's actually the low carbohydrate that makes the difference. It's the ketosis, that if someone is in ketosis, producing ketones, that comes about from the high-fat, low carbohydrate, that it's the ketosis that's the magic sauce. It's the ketosis that actually reduces inflammation. There was a 2019 review done also that said that basically more research is needed because the evidence is contradictory, but that a keto diet could be used therapeutically in order to purposefully change the microbiota to make it more healthy. So really, it depends on how the ketogenic diet is done. So my thoughts, my final message is that actually the ketogenic diet, not unlike FODMAPs diet, was probably never meant to be a way of life diet. It was designed as a short-term therapeutic diet. And by removing so many gut-friendly foods in a long time, it can actually do more harm than good. It's not also a diet that suits everyone. Some people do really badly on it. Some people really experience the opposite. They feel unwell, they have increased inflammation, they put on weight, and actually they have more fat and glucose in their blood. But some people do really well on it, and we don't always know the reason why. The one thing that is clear is that what we should do is just have less crappy carbs. Eat better quality carbs. You know, there's, as I said, a big difference between muffins and fries and biscuits, green leafy veggies, whole grain quinoa, and an apple. So rather than necessarily doing a strict ketogenic diet, perhaps just having low carbohydrate. We generally eat way too many carbohydrates. Having a low carbohydrate diet, eating healthy carbohydrates rather than buckets of crappy carbohydrates, and making sure that the fats that we eat are really healthy fats will actually be a really sensible, sustainable way to eat. You know, eating lots of veggies, making sure you're getting variety, making sure you're getting a good amount, a good diversity and a good amount overall is really, really important. And just not eating the kind of crappy carbs will make a big difference. So hopefully this helps. This isn't anti-ketogenic. It's not pro-ketogenic. It's just saying the research is showing that there's some contradiction. It's probably to do with how the ketogenic diet is being followed. ketosis seems to be the magic sauce, and actually just having a low carbohydrate but healthy carbohydrate and having healthy fats is actually probably the difference between inflammation and not having inflammation in the gut. If you really want to find a bit more, go to my blog, read my blog. I've got heaps, there's about 10 different references there. You can go and have a read and see some of the references, some of the studies that have been done on this. Please let me know your thoughts. Feel free to ask any questions. And I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you got something from this and it's given you food for thought.